Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a deeply psychological yet honestly incredibly universal topic. We're looking at exactly how we unconsciously sabotage our own joy. I mean, have you ever ruined a perfectly good Tuesday afternoon, sitting on a comfortable couch, drinking a great cup of coffee, simply because your brain decided to start a war with itself? Yeah, you're definitely not alone there. Through the specific source material we're breaking down today, we're going to look closely at the silent thief operating in the background of our minds, literally dismantling our contentment piece by piece. It's a profound and honestly kind of unsettling question, isn't it? Why do we actively hunt for our own unhappiness? Think of this explainer as a psychological mystery, and we're about to solve it together. Day in and day out, whether it's checking our phones before we even roll out of bed or silently judging our own accomplishments during the morning commute, we go about these habits completely unaware that we are the prime suspects in the theft of our own joy. We aren't just passively experiencing sadness. No, we're often out there actively seeking the very things that make us feel worse.
Section 1. The comparison addiction. Okay, let's dive into this.
This first phase of our psychological feedback loop forms the absolute foundation of why our happiness just seems to slip right through our fingers. Comparison isn't just some fleeting, random thought that pops into your head on a bad day. According to the source material, it's an active, highly addictive process. Seriously, just picture scrolling through social media on a Friday night. You end up bypassing 50 perfectly normal posts from your friends just to hyperfixate on a former colleague's flashy promotion or some acquaintance's seemingly flawless vacation in Bali. It's like we walk around wearing these invisible, hyper-focused goggles. But here's the kicker. We aren't looking for inspiration. We aren't looking for connection. Instead, we're on this relentless detective hunt for clues that prove our own inadequacy. We actively search for evidence that everyone else is doing better, achieving more, and living way happier lives than we are. And because it operates exactly like an addiction, once we trigger this mental scan, our brains crave more evidence, making it incredibly difficult to turn off. Section 2. The self-image conflict. We're now moving from our outward behaviors to our internal reality, exploring the real damage caused by that mental scan. Let's move to and see how this builds. We're looking at a 3-step cycle of self-sabotage here. Step 1, you scan the world, feeding that addiction we just talked about. Step 2, you find that so-called evidence that others are doing better. And let's face it, right? If you look hard enough with a biased lens, you will always find someone seemingly more successful, more attractive, or just generally more put together. But step 3 is where the real lasting damage actually happens. You take that highly selective external evidence and use it to reinforce an already existing negative self-image. Now, why does this cement the narrative so strongly? Well, because the human brain absolutely loves to be right. When you feel insecure, your brain actively looks for data to validate that insecurity. You are essentially building a bulletproof, albeit completely skewed case against yourself, day in and day out. You're cementing a deeply flawed internal story that insists you're fundamentally falling behind. This creates a really fascinating point of psychological friction. Imagine someone actually gives you a genuine compliment, positive external feedback about your work or your personality. You'd naturally assume this would break the negative cycle, right? You'd think praise would make you feel happy and validated. But when that positive external feedback collides with your deeply entrenched negative self-image, which, remember, is your actual internal reality, there's massive cognitive friction. Because you've spent weeks, months, or even years reinforcing that negative narrative through endless comparison, that genuine compliment suddenly becomes literally impossible for your brain to accept. The praise and the insecurity, they simply cannot exist in the same mental space. It's exactly like trying to run 2 incompatible software programs at the same time. The whole system just crashes. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what happens next in the research. We end up, quote, rejecting compliments because they conflict with a person's existing negative self-image. Your brain is essentially playing defense here. It desperately wants to maintain psychological consistency, even if that consistency is making you absolutely miserable. So what do? You bat away the compliment. You downplay your achievement. You say it was just luck. You actively reject the very praise and validation you think you desperately want, just to protect that flawed narrative you've built up through constant addictive comparison. You push away the good to protect the bad, simply because the bad feels familiar. Section 3, the happiness killer. This is where we transition to the final phase, showing exactly how the outward scan and that inward rejection connect to form one massive roadblock to joy. So, the crucial point is, this continuous loop is actively killing your happiness. Let's just let that stark statement breathe for a second. Think about the heavy emotional weight of this continuous cycle. Every single time you scan, every time you compare your messy real life to someone else's perfectly curated highlight reel, and every time you instinctively brush off a genuine compliment, you aren't just being humble or realistic. You're feeding an addiction that systematically dismantles your capacity to be happy. You're actually doing the work of stealing your own joy, building the very walls that keep contentment out. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to take away from our explainer today. If you're always scanning for evidence that others are better, what incredible, undeniable evidence are you actively ignoring about yourself? Seriously, what unique strengths, what hard-won personal wins, and what beautiful parts of your own life are getting completely filtered out by this addiction? It is time to question those scanning habits, dismantle the negative narrative, and start accepting the good. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I really hope this helps you reclaim your joy.